There are crucial things that Chelsea must do if we are to beat Real Betis in a Conference League final. But what are those things? That's what we're going to answer today. Lads, lasses, and the rest of the masses, welcome back to the Forward Press. Let's look at the Chelsea team first. Wesley Fofana, Amari Kellyman and Misha Mudryk remain out, and Nicholas Jackson will be available once again after he was suspended in the Premier League. I'll be putting our Chelsea side into the 4-3-3, though this will change in game, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. First up in goal will be Philip Jurgensen. Enzo Maresca confirmed that he will start this game. The back four is changed from the Forest win, as I don't foresee James playing another full 90 in a row so soon after the previous one, and because of some tactical changes I'll talk about later, so I'll be putting in Malo Gusto as the right back. The centre-back partnership is back to normal for this one, as Trevor Chalobah partners match winner last time out Levi Colwill at the back. Finishing off this line at left back, as always, will be Marc Cucurella. Moving into midfield, let's start with the deepest man. Moises Caicedo starts here once more, as Romeo Lavia is not registered in the squad. The two advanced midfielders will be slightly altered, as Cole Palmer and Kiernan Dewsbury Hall partner each other in the Conference League once again. That leaves just the three attackers, and this will be changing from the Forest game. Noni Madueke starts on the right side once more, with Tyreek George operating from the left. That leaves one man up top, and as Jackson is available for this one, I'd expect him to start, though Mark Guiu is another option from the bench. Now let's briefly look at our opponents for tomorrow. Betis like to set up in the 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3 for the most part, and they won't change here. Absentees for Los Verde Blancos are plentiful, as they are confirmed to be without Hector Bellerin, Marc Roca, Diego Llorente and Chimi Avila, with doubts surrounding Giovanni Lo Celso as well. The first player going into the side will be goalkeeper Fran Vietes. The back four won't be changing much from their last game, but the right back will be, as Yusuf Sabali comes back into the side. The centre-back partnership remains the same, as Mark Bartra starts alongside Nathan once more. Finally, at left-back will be the evergreen man, Ricardo Rodriguez. The deeper midfielders might change here a bit too. Johnny Cardoso returns to the side after a small injury alongside Sergi Altimira. For the advanced midfielders, starting on the right will of course be the resurgent Anthony. The central 10 will be ex-Madrid man Isco, and finally over on the left will be former West Ham midfielder Pablo Fornals. That leaves one man up top, and he picks himself here. Cedric Bakambu leads the line for the Spanish outfit once again in this competition. That's both teams lined up, so now how do Chelsea best their opposition here? Let's find out. Alright, so here we have the two teams and how I've set them up. We've got Real Betis in this 4-2-3-1 that they often play, and this is a bit different. They can play in multiple ways. Sometimes they play with a 4-3-3 with two wingers. Sometimes they play Pablo Fornals on this left-hand side for a bit more control in the midfield, and that's kind of what I've opted to do for them. I think he'll probably play for them with Isco in the middle, and then obviously Anthony, who's their main wide threat. Now, for Chelsea, I've done a few alterations to the side, which are based on the fact that I expect Enzo Maresca to rotate some players here, specifically because we've got less time to prepare for this game than Betis do, but also just a few tactical things. Now, I think the glaringly obvious one that most people will be like, huh, why is he playing, is Malo Gusto on this right-hand side. We've seen how good James has played for us. Hear me out before you get your pitchforks and your torches out. I think there's kind of two reasons why I would rather have Gusto in this lineup at the moment. Well, three really. The first is, of course, James has played a full 90 very, very recently, and we don't want to risk his fitness. We know he's been getting back into full fitness, and I'm not sure if he's ready for two full 90s so soon after each other. One game a week is perfectly fine, but a little bit more than that might be a bit too risky, so I'll put Gusto in here instead. Obviously, what I would like to do in this scenario is put Caicedo here in the right back role and play Lavia in the middle, but Lavia is not eligible, so this is kind of the next best thing, really. For Gusto as well, I think that Gusto provides the ability for us to kind of go up the pitch a bit more and be a bit more offensive, whereas James will obviously be the one that kind of sits back normally. And in the kind of positions that I've played these two at the back, it makes more sense for Chalobah to be the one that's in that right-sided role, and for example for Gusto to do an inversion if he does invert. And I'm going to talk about something that I want him and Cucurella to do as well later on in this preview that kind of adds more fuel to the reason why he's here. Some of the other options, I've put George here. I think that he just deserves to play. He's been playing in this competition really, really well. I wouldn't see why he needs to kind of come off. I would like to have a dynamic winger that can kind of, take on his man on this. And again, I'll kind of speak about why I think that that's important in a little bit here. Now, Kieran Dewsbury-Hall is also in here. The reason why I've put him in here instead of Enzo, for example, is mainly because, again, I think he deserves to play. He's played very well in this competition. Also because it allows Palmer to play on the right, and I think that when Enzo plays, Palmer's more inclined to kind of drift across to this left-hand side, whereas when Kieran Dewsbury-Hall's here, he's going to occupy that space, and I don't want Palmer to be on the left side. I'd rather him be on the right side where he can link up with Madueke and get into these kind of central areas to get shots off. And the third and final reason why I've got some of these rotations in is simply because this is a European Cup final that could very, very well go down to extra time and penalties, and we need to have players on the bench that are going to be impact subs. For example, like Reece James, he can come off the bench and do something. Like Enzo Fernandez, who can pick up a pass and kind of unlock things. Like, for example, Jadon Sancho or Pedro Neto, who can come off the bench and play in this wing role, that type of thing. I want to have those kind of heavy hitters on the bench and not just have defensive substitutions in case we get ahead, because what happens if Betis are winning in, say, the 80th minute of this game and we don't have any kind of impactful substitutes on the bench? Well, we're going to lose the game, and even though that's very unlikely, considering something I'll talk about in a little bit, I would want to avoid that kind of scenario happening. Same thing with Chalabar here. Again, he's another one that I think that he could be swapped out if need be by like Tosin, for example. Again, Colwill maybe getting substituted off for Badiashile. We want to have like options all over the pitch for players that can come off, and so I've made like a mixture of players that kind of played in the Forest game and some that didn't. Obviously, Caicedo is going to play the full 90. Let's not get that twisted. He's a stalwart of this team. But as I usually do, let's talk about the Betis strengths and what they're good at, because again, I like to kind of put out the idea of nullifying what our opposition strengths are rather than trying kind of playing to our own strengths in a way. But what I will also highlight in this preview specifically is some weaknesses of this Betis team, because I think that they are a little kind of difficult to show in-game examples of, and I want to kind of go over certain things that could happen in this game that are a little bit kind of more out there. I think the first thing that we can take from this Betis side, and from what I've watched of them in their recent games, is that they are very good at high pressing and kind of forcing mistakes with their high pressing. They obviously have these front four players here in this 4-2-3-1, and all of them are going to be players that like to get up the pitch and try and cause issues and try and stop their opposition from being able to play out from the back. Now, personally, I don't think that this is going to be much of a strength against us in particular, because we are a team that is very much designed to do that very thing. We are very much designed to kind of play out from the back. When these players press up, we can get this ball through from Colwill over to Kieran Dewsbury-Hall and turn and kind of run at teams. But they will be doing this, and though we need to kind of be careful with this, because obviously there is mistakes that can happen when we're playing this way, as we've seen from multiple occasions this season. We've seen that Jurgensen in particular has not always been the most confident on the ball. We've seen that in general this team has not been the most confident on the ball because we are a young side, and that nervousness that will inevitably be there in a cup final, and some of these players' only and first ever cup final that they've been playing in, or for a major trophy. There's going to be nerves. There's going to be situations where we make mistakes, and we've got to kind of try and get through this press, but not rely on always passing out from the back. I would like to suggest that we need to do a little bit of what we kind of did against Forest here, where I think Betis in general are a very expansive attacking side. They want to kind of, go forward. They want to attack you. They want to press you. They want to focus more on, those nice intricate passing play moments rather than actually, going backwards. They don't really like defending as much. So there is times where I think that we need to play like Forest, like we did against Forest rather, where we do be a bit more pragmatic, sit back a little bit, play the balls over the top, the long passes, and try and kind of get past this, not only this first line, but maybe the second line, if the second line is also pressed up quite high. And when the ball does obviously go over, we do have Nicholas Jackson in this game who can hold up the ball and is quite good at doing that. Maybe if he holds up the ball, we can play in players like Palmer and we can get attacks like that from kind of out of the blue. The second thing that I want to talk about Betis, and it's probably their main strength, I would like to say, is that their wing play is very, very good on these left and right hand sides, but not just the wingers being good. It's actually the kind of service that they provide into the middle for their central players. Now, obviously, Antony is the main one we're going to be focusing on here because he's had such a resurgent kind of rise in this Betis side, from not only scoring worldy free kicks or massive volleys or, getting curlers from outside the box. The thing which he's actually doing as well, and what Betis have been doing all season really, is not only being quite selfish on the ball with their wingers and scoring, but actually providing for these central players. Now, if you look at the stats for Betis' side, the two players with the most goals and the most assists inside are these two central players that play here. That is Isco, who's going to be starting in this game, and Giovanni Lo Celso, who might not be able to play. Now, what they largely do in these scenarios is when teams are kind of playing against them in a low block style, for example, say if we've kind of moved into like the situation we usually do where we play that kind of 4-4-2, we have Palmer and Jackson left up top. And what they usually do against these types of sides where they kind of they sit back and they're kind of absorbing pressure is they like to get the ball out to these central areas outside the box and take shots from outside the box. They are very comfortable at taking shots from outside the box. They don't always want to get to the byline and cut it across, even though they can do that. A lot of the times they will opt to take shots from outside the box, and it's from these central areas with Isco and Giovanni Lo Celso where they've gotten so many goals and assists through this kind of method, whether that be just receiving the ball in this kind of inside channel and being able to play a 1-2 over the top for an ongoing winger, or for Cedric Bakambu or Cucho Hernandez, that type of player, whoever's playing there at the time. They can do that, but also it's the 1-2s into the box from the central areas as well, so they can do it the opposite way. They play it out to a winger, they make this advancing run into the box, and they can get the ball to them in the box. It's something they're very, very good at doing, and one of the things which I want to highlight the most about this Betis side is just the way that they are very, very committed to committing bodies forward. They like to get bodies into the box. They don't like to kind of, hide from their opposition. They're quite brave in that regard. And at times during this game, there will be situations where we probably have some nervy moments in defence. They'll probably be able to unlock us with a pass from Isco, for example, with a little bit of dribbling from Antony, for example. And that's something we're going to have to look out for because it's one of their main strengths. Now, the third and final thing that I want to talk about in terms of one of their strengths is just how good they are on transition. Now, we've spoken about how good their wing play is in general. We've spoken about how they're able to kind of play it through very easily when they have the ball with their wingers. Something that is very, very good for them is specifically when teams lose the ball against them, they are very good at being able to move the ball fast into those wing positions, for example, with Antony on this right-hand side, and get into advanced areas against depleted numbers. Now, we're a team that are very, very good at kind of dealing with transitions a lot of the time, and I'll talk about how we can kind of counteract this in a second here, but it's something we want to avoid as much as possible because, again, it's where they're going to find comfort in being able to attack down the wings. They're going to find comfort in attacking into space where there's obviously more bodies committed forward. They're going to be finding this opportunity to run into these positions. And we know how confident Antony is. We know how confident Isco is. We know how confident Bakambu is, considering how many goals he's gotten in the Conference League. These players are going to be hungry. They're going to be wanting to attack into that space, and we're going to have to kind of deal with that in our own way, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. Now, I don't often talk about a team's weaknesses when I do these previews, but I think it's kind of important for this game because a lot of the weaknesses that Betis have and some of the things we can do to beat them are things that aren't very easily kind of described or very easily shown off in in-game examples, for example. The first thing I want to talk about is just how leaky their defense is. It is really bizarre how they are up in 6th place in their La Liga table because of how much they concede goals. Now, if we look at the statistics here, they actually only have 7 clean sheets in the league this season. That is the joint 3rd worst record in the entire league, and they only have 2 more clean sheets than Real Valladolid, who are bottom of the table and have conceded 90 goals this season. That is very, very worrying for a team like Betis because they are a team, as I said, that are very good at attacking, and they kind of rely on that attacking to get them out of sticky situations. They've relied on, for example, Antony scoring screamers to get them out of situations where they conceded before. They concede in pretty much every single game that they play, and they kind of rely on the fact that they back themselves to score more goals than the opposition, which can work for them against lower league sides in the La Liga and, for example, against smaller, weaker sides in the Conference League. But is that going to really work against a team like Chelsea, who are not only much higher quality than those teams, but also are notorious for being recently anyway, quite stubborn in defence. We've got 7 clean sheets in the last 10 games, I believe, so very, very good defensively. So they can't really rely on the fact that they're going to score. But the main thing is the fact that Chelsea have only failed to score 7 times in all competitions this season. There is very, very high chance that we are going to score in this game, and it's a worrying thing for Betis to kind of think about the way that they play and expect that they're going to just outscore us, because it's probably not going to happen. If they think that they're going to be able to, sit back and absorb pressure and break on us, that works fine. But if they want to play the expansive football that they know how to do and they want to do, if they're that brave to do that, I think that's going to be a massive mistake, and I think that we will inevitably score goals in this game. I don't think there is a single chance in this game that we don't score, and hopefully the monojinx doesn't kick in there when I say that, touch wood, but I just don't see it happening. I don't see them keeping a clean sheet against us, and if they allow us to score first, for example, we've seen how good we have been recently in scoring first and then sitting on those score lines, being defensive, being pragmatic, and then breaking on the counter. Now, again, I've spoken about this before, but Chelsea are a very good transitional side. Betis, if they do commit bodies forward, are going to allow us to attack them on the counter attack, and that's not what they really want to do. They want to keep the ball, they want to, have that possession and be able to create chances of their own right. But if they are losing the ball and if they are failing to score, and for example, if we are being very pragmatic, then they're just going to lose. And there's going to be a time during the game where they're going to have to change up the game plan, maybe even commit more bodies forward, and then that can lead to more goals for us and things like that. I just do not think that this is going to go well for them if they play in the exact same style they have in La Liga against us. Another thing which I wanted to highlight about Betis, and this isn't particularly a weakness, it's just kind of a worrying thing for them, is the fact that their form has been very poor as of late. They only have 1 win for their last 6 games, and most of those kind of games that they've played aren't against great opposition. There's obviously the one game in there against Atletico, which they got absolutely hammered in, but the rest of them are against teams like Osasuna, Vallecano, those types of teams that have basically not been teams that they would expect to lose or draw to, and they've been losing or drawing to. Now, some of that is probably due to rotation because they are preparing for this game, but it's still worrying for them to kind of come into a cup final with not very much momentum against a team in Chelsea that have just secured Champions League football with we've got the wind in our sails in a way, and it could be quite a kind of stomping here if they don't start well and start confident, because again, a lot of their good play from players like Anthony, from players like Bakambu, like Isco, for example, is based on confidence. They have to be very confident going forward, or they don't really create, and they're not, they're a bit stagnated if they're not. Now, another thing that they've been relatively weak to recently, not all season, but recently, has been balls into the box from wide areas and specifically set pieces as well. Now, if we look at the Fiorentina game and some of the chances that they get in both of those legs, obviously in the second leg they concede 2 headers, they nearly concede a third. Both of those 2 headers come from Robin Gersons at the back post, and it's been a kind of constant recently, and I think it's slightly because Bartra is not the greatest in the air sometimes, and for example they kind of have they have the kind of fullbacks that aren't really aerially competent other than Ricardo Rodriguez on the left hand side, but usually it comes from this right side, so he's kind of a non-factor here. And the ball can go to the back post and they can get goals from that, and they get a lot of opportunities against them from not only corners but free kicks. And though we aren't particularly a good side aerially by any means, I still think that this is an avenue that we can kind of take, especially towards, like, for example, the end of the game when Reece James has come on into the Gusto. He can swing the balls in very accurately. We see that. Maybe Cucurella can get another header and, that type of thing. And it's just something to kind of concern themselves with. And the final thing which I want to talk about Betis, and something that's a weakness but also a strength for them, it's kind of a double-edged sword, is that they play their defence very, very narrow. Now, because they have these 2 holding midfielders, they like to drop very deep, and they like to make it quite difficult when they are defending to break them down in the middle. For example, in these areas when we get the ball to Palmer, for example, getting the ball into Jackson when he's surrounded by these many players is quite difficult to do, and that's kind of one of the things that they are very good at doing, and they kind of tuck in here and they say, no, you're not getting through the middle of us, and you can kind of try and break us down another way. The issue with that is, what has actually kind of done, even though this is a strength and it stops teams from being able to play through the middle, against teams that are very, very much winger based, like ours is, for example, with George and Madueke, and how I always speak about how we want to get the balls out to our wingers and then take on players 1v1. That's not going to be very good against us simply because of the space that they leave out in these wide areas, because of how narrow they are with their fullbacks, is very, very dangerous. Now, Madueke, we know, is very good at running around the outside to get cutbacks. He's very, very good at running inside to kind of take shots on. And though they will kind of stop him from being able to get those kind of opportunities inside because they've got the players here, the play going around the outside is something that they are very, very susceptible to. Now, I've got in-game examples of this one, and I'll show that in a little bit when we kind of talk about how to exploit this. But it's something that they are very notorious at doing, is packing this 18-yard box with players, and they don't often like to kind of engage wingers. They don't like to bring their fullbacks out in maybe fear that they're going to get teams playing in this kind of half space and kind of go through them. For example, a Palmer going into here and the ball going through to him. Maybe that's why they kind of do this. I'm not sure what the actual reasoning behind it is, but it's something that they do, and they don't really like kind of committing towards wingers, especially on the transition. If they get situations where wingers are running at them on the transition, they just back off and back off and back off and don't ever really engage, because again, maybe it's out of fear of getting out of position and then opening things up for them. I'm not really sure, but that's what we're kind of seeing in the recent games, at least. It's all well and good me kind of highlighting those things, but what do we actually do here in order to counteract their strengths and how to exploit their weaknesses? The first thing is being able to play through the pressure that they do with this kind of front four, and I'm going to show an example of this working against them in the Espanyol game, because I think it's something that we can very much do as well. Now, what we're going to have to be able to do in this game, as I kind of highlighted earlier, is find the pass every single time, and when they do press up in this kind of, this block of four, whether that's finding an advanced player like Kinnan Dewsbury Hall with the long ball, or finding the short ball to Caicedo, for example, and maybe we do this kind of inversion thing that we usually do with the fullbacks. We can kind of, play the ball through the lines to Gusto. Say if this pass, if this is like a pressure coming in here to block the Caicedo side, the ball can go the opposite way to Gusto, and then we can kind of get through and attack into that space. We're going to have to navigate that press when they do it. All right, now this is an example of that happening in the Espanyol game. Espanyol are the blue side here that are going from left to right, and as you can see, the Betis side have got these four players up here in this kind of press and in this kind of attack, right? And what we can see is that once they've kind of gone up here and they've committed these numbers forward, whether this is being played out from the back through that pressure, or again, just kind of in this kind of counter-attacking scenario, we see that we get the player on the ball here, and he's going to be looking to go up the pitch, and you can see already that this first line of Betis is completely beaten from just one pass from the goalkeeper, I believe this is, and it's quite shocking how open they are. And even look at this, you can see, I'm not sure if this is Anthony or someone else, but you see they are just talking to each other and not really paying attention to what's going on. He could very easily try and put some more pressure on here and stop this ball from going through, but as I play this on, you can see what happens. I've sped it up a little bit, and eventually what ends up happening is that as they're kind of recovering and they're going back, the ball goes central to this kind of six. I'm not sure who this is, and what we're going to see here is that, again, because this line of Betis players is kind of out of position, there's no pressure on the ball for him, and he's going to easily pass this through, and they're going to get a goal from this scenario. Now, the ball gets played through into this central role, which is completely unoccupied by any of the players, because the two central defensive players are kind of going back to stop the counter-attack, and then the other four attacking players are already committed too high. Their number 10 gets on the ball, and this is going to be one of the most simple goals you see this season. It's simply a pass through the lines into the box, and again, you see from here just how kind of easy this is, because the players are all out of position here. They were too committed high up the pitch. They had obviously the first press kind of going on. They had the second press going on with the central defensive midfielders. They've given this player too much time on the ball. He plays a pass. It's a very good pass, to be fair, and maybe Nathan should be doing a bit better here. But what's going to happen is the ball's obviously going to run through to him, one touch, and it's a finish, and it's a good goal for Espanyol. And this is again very early on in the in the game. It's about 27 minutes into the game, and it's a goal that Betis have scored or conceded rather early in the game. And this is something that I don't think is going to be particularly good for Betis if they do against us, because again, this is a very leaky defense. They're going to concede goals, but obviously in this game against Espanyol, I think they actually come back to either draw or win this game because they rely again on that kind of being able to do that against these weaker sides. Against Chelsea, if they concede an early goal in the 25th minute, I don't think they're going to come back and win. Now, the next thing which I think is important for us to do is specifically based around how, as I spoke about earlier, they are very, very centered around their wing play, and not only wing play, but supplying the center with their wingers. And I think what we need to do, and this is an absolute must in this game, is double up, maybe even triple up on any winger that gets the ball, whether that's Anthony on this side or Pablo Fornals, who I've put on this side. We need to bring two players over, whether that be Caicedo and Cucurella, for example. Maybe even if George can sit back and be a bit more defensive as well, we need to be able to be here, not only because again this makes it harder for them to go around the outside or get into these kind of inside positions for shots, but the main reason for this is because I need a player here in order to kind of block this pass into Isco where he's going to get space and get shots off or be able to create from there. I think we really need to be stopping them from having comfortable possession when they do get out to the wings. And again, if we do force them out to the wings, I want it to be a situation where they don't feel comfortable, because they usually feel quite comfortable out here on the wings, and obviously Anthony can go on mazy runs or what have you. We need to make it uncomfortable for him, make him just play it back if they have possession. For example, we want them to kind of force back and try and force them to get out of our zones here. So if we can block off the passes here with Caicedo, for example, if we can double up on the wingers with Cucurella and George, and I know Cucurella will be high at times, so this might be a little bit difficult to do, but if we can do that, I do believe that we can kind of shut down their main threats, which is getting the ball into those central areas for shots and creation. And going hand in hand with that is the next point I want to make, is that I think that controlling possession in this game is going to be something that we really, really need to do. Now, I spoke about how in the Forest game we kind of wanted to flip the script on them and, you know, play pragmatically, and we can do that in this game as well. And as I spoke about earlier, Betis are quite a transitional side at times. That being said, I think in this game specifically, it benefits us more if we are able to keep hold of the ball and frustrate Betis because they can't get opportunities to score. Now, that is an all-encompassing thing, and it doesn't just mean, you know, being able to pass the ball around and keep possession, but it's also specifically when we lose the ball, what our reaction is. When we lose the ball, because they are so good in transition, our counter press needs to be on point as usual. We need to be able to get players like, for example, Caicedo, like Cucurella, who likes to press up really high. We need to get the ball back as quickly as possible to stop them from making those breaks in behind and getting those breaks on the wings, for example. And the third thing in that kind of regard is we need to press ourselves. Now, we know we're a team that likes to press teams. We know that Betis are a team that wants to play possession-based football, want to play that, you know, that classic kind of Spanish style of football. But the difference here is that we have a press that is very, very good at forcing teams to go long, and we've been very good in recent games at kind of winning aerial balls when it goes into these kind of areas, whether that be with Colwill or Tosin or whoever is here kind of mopping up at the back as a centre back, or if it goes all the way over to the goalkeeper and we can kind of claim it. We've been very good at forcing the team that is on the ball to give the ball away via our pressure, via our kind of persistence in that regard. And even we saw in one of the previous rounds with Jackson actually getting goals from this by putting on so much pressure on teams. Obviously, we've seen Guiu do that as well at times. And in general, I think it's a matter of not just, you know, forcing them to go long, but forcing them to try and play quicker than they actually are able to do, you know, kind of force them to rush their passes, force them to give the ball away back to us, because then we can hit them on the transition after the pressure. But more importantly, we can kind of just get the ball back. And I think that's going to be imperative for this game, is just keeping the ball for as long as possible, because if we've got the ball, they can't score. And again, a team like Betis that are very susceptible to conceding, if they concede a goal early, for example, or concede 1 or 2 goals early, and we just decide, you know, you're not getting the ball anymore, they simply cannot get back into the game. Now, this is a good example of how uncomfortable Betis can get and how out of position and kind of ran ragged they can get sometimes under certain conditions and under certain pressure. And it's something that I feel like we're going to be able to do quite well, is This is just from a long pass, I believe. They've taken a really long free kick or a goal kick. The ball has gone into this channel, and the centre back, Nathan, who's supposed to be in this position, has gone out to kind of get the ball. Now, he, under the pressure of this player, is going to panic and smash it long instead of, what we would probably do in this scenario, which is turn around, pass it back to the goalkeeper, play out of that kind of pressure. They panic a little bit here. I've got this sped up, but I'm going to play it on. He smashes the ball long, as you can see, and then when the ball eventually does fall straight back into the hands of the Valencia side here, which is again something that I think that we can do. We can force those long balls with our pressure. Eventually, what just ends up happening is the ball comes straight back to them. They're going to get this opportunity to go up the pitch now, and again, they've got these numbers committed up the pitch here, those 4 kind of pressers that I like to talk about. They've got the 2 central defensive midfielders here, but again, no pressure on this player who's completely in free space, and still at the moment we can see as the kind of back line of Betis, the centre back Nathan is still out of the picture here. We've got Ricardo Rodriguez on the left side, we've got Mark Bartra, we've got I believe there's Hector Bellerin at this time all over here. So there's not very much kind of central defense here now, because Nathan has had to go out here to kind of, make up for the ball over the top. And what's going to happen is that they're going to play some neat football down this right hand side. As he now gets into position again, Nathan, he's kind of running back to get the line to kind of play that offside trap, get back in line with his defenders to stop the ball from going in. But he's actually committed himself too far at the pitch in a kind of panic to get back. And what ends up happening is that the ball is going to go through that space where he should be. And again, he's had to run out to get this ball, run all the way back to get back into position. And by the time he's done those 2 sprints, he's too kind of, going one way to go back the other way. And by the time he actually makes his run back here, the Valencia player is going to get in and get a shot away, and they score from it. And this is the type of thing that we can do against Betis in this game. We can reposition their defenders by putting that pressure on. We can force them to go long and give us the ball back, and then attack them on the kind of counter attack. It's something that we do very often in our Premier League games. We could definitely do the same thing against this Betis side. Now, the final thing which I want to talk about in this game, and this is the most important, and so that's why I've saved the best till last here, is we need to use our wingers to exploit that narrow kind of defense that they have. Now, I want us to use a little bit of kind of stray away from the Maresca ball style a little bit here. We know how good and tricky we have players like George and Madueke, how tricky they can be and how good they are at exploiting wide spaces, but also something that Betis have been very, very susceptible to is overlapping fullbacks. Now, that's part of the reason why I've put Malo Gusto in here, because he is more inclined than someone like Reece James, for example, with his relatively lower fitness, to get up the pitch to support Madueke and to go around the outside. Now, James, of course, would be a player that kind of stay on the inside, and we've seen in those inside moments him play those balls to the back post and things like that, and that's something he's very good at. Whereas Gusto is a player that I think can combine better with Madueke, and of course, I think Madueke is going to be the main threat here in this team if he is the starting winger, because of how good he is on the wing. He's by far our best winger in the side, and with him being up against, for example, Ricardo Rodriguez, who, despite being quite evergreen, as I mentioned earlier, is rather old and is not the fastest, he's going to have an absolute field day taking him on, and especially if he's got that overlap to kind of worry about as well, to kind of whip balls into the back post, or for example, or just get into the box here for cutbacks for Jackson, for example. This is going to be something that we need to do. And as I said, I've got loads of examples of this working against Betis in just the recent games that they've played, not even just throughout the whole season, of them leaving these spaces out wide because they are so narrow and getting hit and getting punished for it. Now, obviously, on the opposite side, we can kind of do this with Cucurella as well, who likes to get up and support his winger, and kind of, even though he likes to play a bit more inside, he can also do that overlapping. But even if he's not doing the overlapping, and even if Gusto's not doing the overlapping, what it does is it still puts a player out wide and a player inside, which is basically the same thing. It's just having one player out wide and one player inside, so one player occupies the fullback on the inside channel, and then one can go around the outside and exploit all of this space. And as I said, this has happened lots of times to them. I'm going to show you some examples now, and then we can kind of show how effective this is against Betis. Now, in this first example, we've got the Espanyol midfielder on the ball here, and for the first thing I want to kind of point out is immediately just how narrow and how kind of lazy this defending from Betis is. Obviously, Betis are this team that are going backwards towards their own goal. They have Ricardo Rodriguez out here on the wing. They have the two centre backs that are occupied by one striker and kind of right next to each other. And then Sabali here we see is out really, really kind of narrow in the central kind of line here. And what you can't see, but beyond the screen here and behind this kind of the sponsor, is that there is a player, the number 7 for Espanyol, out here on his complete lonesome out there, not being marked by the fullback. And what happens here as we're going to play this on, the ball is going to go all the way out to him from that central position. And again, even though this is a winger who can very easily run into all of this space, look at the reaction of this Betis backline. There is no no kind of threat of, oh, we need to get out to him, we need to stop him from running at us. It's still this really narrow kind of player in Sabali here that, again, the midfielder's still really narrow. They've got, look at all of this space. This is criminal, how much space that this winger has got. And again, the two centre backs are still occupied by the striker. They're not really committing back. In my head, when I see this scenario, if I was a fullback, I would be like, oh no, this is danger. I need to close him down. And that's not what happens in this case. And what happens is the ball will be touched down. He's going to run out. Eventually, he's going to get out to here. But again, look how narrow the centre backs are. They're not kind of covering this space. In fact, they're now that they're ball watching this way, they're not actually watching the player that they're supposed to be marking. Sabali eventually gets out to him, but it's too late because he's gotten up the pitch now, and by the time he's going to come over to mark him, the player's going to cut inside and get a shot away. Now it doesn't end up in a goal, and this player who's running in off the back of the defense should possibly score here. He probably should be in a better position, but he doesn't. But again, it's just an opportunity that never should happen because they should never get that opportunity to play that long pass into that channel so easily. Now, in this next example is from the Osasuna game, and I've got two examples from this exact same game. We can see they're on the counter attack here with their number 14. And again, the back four very, very narrow here, not really kind of expecting the players that could be outside them. Now, this eventually doesn't actually go to this side, but you can see kind of, again, how narrow this fullback is. And if the ball was to be switched over to the left-hand side, there could be danger there. In fact, what actually happens is it goes to the side that the ball's already on, and it still kind of shows a case of, like, just complete utter disregard for players that are either, advancing down the wings or overlapping from fullback. Now we see the defender here is more concerned on the player that's got the ball, which of course makes sense, but he's more concerned on him and he's running inwards towards his own kind of back line. And this player on the touchline who's pointing, saying, hey, play me in, is completely ignored. Completely ignored. You imagine this could be Malo Gusto, this could be, for example, this could be Madueke asking for the ball in behind, and this could be Gusto in the inverted position. One ball into him, and for example, Madueke in these kind of in all of this space is going to be able to run around and get goals and get opportunities. What ends up actually happening here, we're going to play it on here. Again, player completely concerned over this man, and completely ignores the guy who's actually the threat in this example. The ball is being passed out towards him. And what ends up happening is the ball goes out wide, and he's going to switch a nice cross into the box here. And of course, Osasuna have Bodimir in the centre, so very, very good aerial players, which we don't particularly have. But again, if this is across the face, for example, and we've got runners going into those kind of advanced areas, we can definitely create something from this. The ball goes over, and although it doesn't actually get into the middle area, what eventually ends up happening is it goes out to the guy on the left who's completely ignored because, again, look how narrow they are. They're all, you can throw a blanket over them. They're so close together, and the ball is going to fall to Brian Zaragoza on this left-hand side, and what ends up happening is that he, now free, completely gets his opportunity to run in, get a shot. And even though it doesn't go in or anything, it's a dangerous opportunity that Betis have allowed, simply because, again, they are too narrow to deal with these wide threats. Now, this next example is also from that Osasuna game, where we get the ball in the middle here, and though there is pressure on this player, again, what we can see is how narrow this back line of Betis are. This player completely free on this left wing, so if this player does escape this pressure, this ball is so open and they can get into the opportunities kind of further up the pitch. We have this number 12 over here, who I believe is the fullback who's overlapping, who's completely free, again, completely ignored by this player in the same game. And what is going to end up happening here is that the player is going to get past this pressure very nicely. The ball is going to go through here to the side, and you can see already he's saying, come on, let's go this way, let's go out wide. There's so much space because, again, you can throw a blanket on these players. They're having a picnic in the middle of the pitch. And they're completely ignoring the wide threats. And against a team like Chelsea, who again are very based on that wide play, especially that wide wing play, this is going to be this is criminal. You cannot do this against a top side. And maybe they're kind of underestimating Osasuna, which I think is really silly to do, especially because again they have Budimir in the middle, who's a fantastic target man. So ignoring the wide threats that can play the ball into him is rather bizarre. I'm not really sure what Manuel Pellegrini's kind of game plan there was, but again, what we see here, the ball is going to come through, and I'll speed this up a little bit for you. The ball is going to come through, and he's going to be played out to this wide area, who's completely unmarked. And again, but the guy on the guy on the left hand side is also unmarked. And then again, the ball is going to be whipped in because he has too much time and space. This is the issue: is that the player that has finally eventually come over to him has given him too much time to get his head up, look where he's going to play the ball, and then actually play the ball and whip the ball in. He has way too much time to do that. That's absolutely criminal that a player should be getting that much space and time out on this wide area. And of course, the ball gets whipped in to Budimir at the back post, and he scores. It's just criminal to me that, again, that they would play so narrow against a team that is notorious for playing wide. And again, maybe it's because they are concerned about the midfield area. I'm assuming that's what it is, that they don't want to concede chances through the midfield. And obviously, at the start of that break, we see that they are playing and building through the midfield, so that's maybe why they've done it. But it's so bizarre seeing how much space they leave wingers. And against Chelsea, that's just not going to be good enough. The examples don't stop there, because here's another one from the Valencia game now. We've got the ball that has gone over the top at the moment, has gone into this kind of wide right channel, has been nodded back down towards the Valencia player here, and he's going to touch it down. And again, you can already see how narrow this team is. Look at all this space over here that is perfectly open for this player to kind of exploit and run into. And of course, you can see what's going to happen here. It's not, I don't even have to point it out. You know what's going to happen. The ball is going to go over the top. Again, Anthony out here on the wide is not getting back to defend. And the fullback who's supposed to be marking this guy is completely non-factor here. The ball goes out to the man in the middle here, and he's going to get an opportunity to get a shot off as he plays the ball in. Very, very good save from Adrian, it must be said, so they don't concede. But again, it's far too easy. It's one pass out there and a shot on goal. And again, against a team like Chelsea that, despite us not being too clinical this season, we are a goal scoring team. Again, as I said, we've failed to score only 7 times all competitions this season. We're not going to pass up these types of opportunities, I don't think. Like, that's going to be a situation where we score from, especially with someone like maybe Jadon Sancho, who's over here. If it's Pedro Neto late on in the game, if this is Jackson, maybe he can get a kind of peeling off from that kind of left-hand side. Maybe he can score on his right foot here. It's dangerous and it's risky, and there's no reason for them to do it. And we're going to be able to exploit it multiple times if we kind of are allowed that type of space, as Valencia has been kind of allowed here. Now, this final example is one that I think is very important because it's against much better opposition, and it's against an opposition that we could have faced in this final. It's in the Europa League semi-final against Fiorentina, and we see Fiorentina on the ball here. Now, it's a slightly different scenario, I will say that, because Fiorentina play the wing backs. They obviously play Robin Gosens really high, who's up here, and again, as I said, in the reverse fixture, he actually scores 2 goals. But again, we can already see, again, look how narrow the back line is. This player is completely free if he wants to make a run. Gosens, again, who is the threat here, is just not really being paid attention to. Like, this is an easy pass they can play up to him, and they are just not even trying to make it difficult for this pass to go into the wide area. We know that Fiorentina want to play wide. It's obviously what their formation is designed to do. And because it's just so casual, there is no kind of, panic in the back line of like, oh, this is a danger sign, we need to react to this. There's no reaction at all. And what we're going to see here is the ball gets played on. The ball goes to Robin Gosens. Again, 0 pressure on the ball. Absolutely none. There is no pressure on the ball from this player. This player, I think this is Anthony, not getting back to stop him either. And they just allow this absolutely peach of a pass to go in from Robin Gosens, and he gets a header from Mandragora, which unfortunately doesn't go in. But again, that's such an easy chance from one pass, just because they're too lazy. And maybe it's a game plan, I don't know. Maybe it's just the players not being active enough, but it's just simply not good enough. In if you're going to be a team that you want to be competing for a European trophy, you cannot be defending that poorly. And again, it's not like this is something that has just happened one-off, because I've shown you multiple examples, and there are more in these games that I haven't picked out. I've just picked out 5. But there is so many examples of them doing this to every team they come up against, and it's crazy how they allow that much space and time. You think about that. That could be, for example, Cucurella in that position to whip the ball in for Nicholas Jackson. That could be Pedro Neto on the left-hand side, who we know has got a very, very accurate crossing as well. Like, that could be Palmer, who's moved out wide right. You know how good Palmer's delivery is. If they are not respecting the kind of delivery of a player like Robin Gersons, who we know is very, very good at playing those balls into the box, I don't think they're going to do the same thing for players that we have as well. And I think it's going to be so criminal to see like how much space they offer wide players. It's just ridiculous. And again, maybe I'm really not sure what the actual idea behind it is. Maybe it's to consolidate the midfield and kind of, make that compact and hard to break down. But it's not good enough for, as I said, it's not good enough for a team that wants to be winning European trophies. And I genuinely think they're going to come under a really big shock if they try and defend this exact way against Chelsea. To summarise, if we do those 3 things, double up on their wingers, control possession, and exploit the narrow defence of Real Betis, we will comfortably win this game. Chelsea will become the first and only team in history to win all major European trophies, and will end the season mightily successful. I will be doing a live watch along later today as the game is on, so make sure you come check out the stream and hopefully we can celebrate together. If you enjoyed the video, please leave it a like, it really helps out the channel, and for more videos like this one, don't forget to subscribe. We are so close to our goal of 20,000 by the end of the year, so I'd appreciate it massively. Thank you guys so much for watching as ever, and remember, football can be as simple as black and white.